I'll see how long I'm able to record something this time before it decides to stop itself. Alright, so I feel like we live in a world that seeks to impose darkness and destruction, self-destruction, self-loathing, poverty and sickness and death, like just darkness upon us, basically. It's a world that pushes us to fall into unconsciousness, to be lost to ourselves, to be lost to our true nature, to be stripped of everything that made us human to begin with. Everything that makes us real. Just so much of this world is an imposition. It's an imposition of darkness, it seems like, in mass. Like we're just outnumbered and like outflanked by darkness on all sides, it seems like. I feel like I woke up within the Matrix, basically. But like I don't see a way out of it. I feel like I'm surrounded by essentially Agent Smiths attempting to impose their... Like, this world is so... It tries so hard to destroy us and to corrupt us. Makes it very difficult to exist in a state of conscious awareness in goodness for any great length of time. There's so much suffering in this world that's imposed on us. I try to get into like a higher state of consciousness. People talk about being... You hear like New Agers especially a lot talk about and being in a higher state of consciousness, manifesting a positive reality, and so on and so forth. And I think there is something to that, but it's strange though, because like some of us are very heavily opposed on all sides by our antithesis, by forces that seek to corrupt and or destroy us. I don't know. it hurts, you know. Seeing myself brought low by this place, you know. One of the worst things is how this place does lead me to self-destructive tendencies. It's just overwhelming to be constantly, to seem like constantly constantly surrounded by just an imposition. What's that song? Johnny Cash song? I see a darkness. It's dreadful imposition, you know. I feel like there's love and light within me, tendency towards kindness and generosity and love for others, care for others, but it's opposed by just the reality of our existence of being in a world that's so screwed up. Hmm. I don't know how to say it. Just, what was it he said? I could see its opposition comes rising up sometimes. Its dreadful imposition comes blinding up my mind, you know? There's a darkness in this place, a dark force that imposes itself on people, and I try to resist it, and I do resist it as often as I can. But that darkness rises up. Because I'm surrounded by it. I'm surrounded by it. And I'm living in a world where there doesn't seem to be a right way. Confronted every day so many different ways with a sense that, well, I think I've mentioned this before, but have you heard of the train experiment? Or whatever it's called, some sort of scenario where it's like a morality test or something. They try, I don't know. It's something like they present a scenario to people where there's you're a conductor driving a train. It's too late to stop, and there's two tracks up ahead. One going one way, one going the other. On one side of the tracks, there's 5 people tied to the tracks. The other side, there's 2 or 3 or whatever, right? And the question they put before you is, what do you do? Do you switch to this track or that? Yeah. Because it really feels like we're in a world that kind of imposes that sort of a thing on us on a daily basis, right? For instance, um, I don't know, there's so many different different examples of this, right? Like for instance, let's say you had $100 or something, or I don't know. Say you had, let's make it a bigger amount, $50,000 or something, because I was confronted with this before, and I thought about, like, a couple of years ago I did have that, and I thought the thought actually crossed my mind to try to help the less fortunate or whatever. But then you come to the thought, go into any parking lot at any given time, there may be 1,000 homeless people there, right, or more, give or take, right? But we're limited in our resources, in our ability to help, right? I don't know. I give you all. There's a lot of weird examples. Like for instance, let's say you're driving down the road and somebody is trying to pull out of a parking lot, but there's heavy traffic. So it's going to be difficult for them to merge with traffic. So from a certain perspective, and certainly to them, if you were to slow down or stop your car in order to let them out, to let them pull out in front of you, you would be helping that person out. But at the same time, you'd be inconveniencing the people in the vehicles behind you. And hitting the brakes may cause the person behind you to rear end you or something. You could cause a traffic accident by trying to help somebody out, right? Mm-hmm. Or let's say you had $50,000 and you chose someone that you thought was very well deserving, really needed the help, and you give them all that money. Well, now you don't have any money. Now you're homeless and you need help. You see what I'm saying? It's like there's so many limitations that we have basically on what we can really do to help and if we try to help, in many instances we may actually be harming someone by trying to help them, you know? It could be, hurting them or hurting someone else by helping them, right? Even hurting ourselves or whatever by helping somebody else. So we live in a world that kind of feels like there's not a lot we can do to help. So to even do good things in this world, the waters are kind of muddied to where it makes it difficult to really know what's right. It's kind of screwed up, right? But it is that way, kind of. I've had a lot of experiences in this life that feel kind of magical and good and many times, but a lot of dark experiences, a lot of bad things too. Many times they coincide. So I find it hard to keep myself in a higher state of consciousness, to be in touch with with what I feel is my authentic self. At the core, I feel that at my core, there's a purity and a goodness in me. But at the same time, I feel like there's a darkness in this world that kind of imposes itself upon me. I don't know, man. And it's like, it's hard to explore this, to explore, to get in touch with what I feel is my truest self in this world, and to be in touch with God and or whatever, God consciousness and nature and, you know, whatever. Because this false world and this darkness external imposes itself upon me. I don't know, man. I don't know. It's something that I've always wished to explore. There is some part of me which I feel at the core is good. But being stuck in this false world, surrounded by all these the dark energies, and being forced to live in a way that's so unnatural, and feeling basically you're isolated. You know, if you try to, I don't find myself in this higher state of consciousness as often, but here and there, I can get into a higher state of consciousness. You could say, they want to call it God consciousness or whatever. But the darkness comes heavy against me when I try to do that. And it's very difficult to exist in this world the way things are, in this state of being. Well, I mean, it's kind of like, what's that saying? Make of yourself sheep and the wolves will eat you. Yeah. It does feel like we're surrounded by threats, and like that. Honestly, if you try to purify yourself and get to a state where you are in the state of goodness and innocence and so on, then you're surrounded by dangers that will take advantage of you, push you around, try to hurt you, try to frighten you. This world imposes itself on you. The darkness imposes itself on you to the point where you fall out of a higher state in a feeling like you have to try to defend yourself or something from these things that are attacking you, kind of thing, or these threats that form all around you. And in the end, maybe it's all fake, maybe it's all an illusion in a sense. But which of us can face infinity without flinching? Which of us could remain standing on a field of battle, disarmed and harmless, against an invading horde of Mongols or something charging at us with swords? And which of us would... Well, I mean, it's true though. There's good and evil within us all, and I guess there's a gray areas too and stuff like that. But sometimes you hear people talking about this light and darkness and so on, talking about, like, I mean, sometimes I'll hear the type of arguments made by like vegans, for instance, right? And it kind of makes sense, but it's like we're in a world where we are essentially forced into darkness, whether we wish to be or not. There's no way to exist in this realm without, I mean, it's a world of death, basically. Well, yeah, in so many ways. When you see more, like, the massive extent of the destruction, it's like, well, for instance, like, if you even set foot on the grass and go for a walk in the park on the grass, you're probably stepping on insects and mice, frogs, etc., not to mention the grass, and you're killing a bunch of things just by walking through a field, basically. If you plant a garden to till up the soil and stuff, you're killing tons of moles and mice and insects and snakes and all sorts of things are getting killed just so you can till up the soil to plant your garden. And then when you harvest the garden and the vegetables, like they've done studies, the plants are essentially alive and have feelings according to various studies. Basically, they communicate with each other and stuff like that. So if you eat plants, you're consuming life. If you eat meat, you're consuming life and contributing to the death of another living being. There's just doesn't seem to be any way to live in this place without being part of this cycle of life and death. There's a darkness in that. Something very dark and twisted about that. This whole world essentially is, it's like a graveyard, man. You can't walk from one side of the park to, you can't, we tread on dead men's bones, Everything in this world is, if you look into some of the weirder shit, for instance, like the stories of giants, and you see all these massive, people talk about some of this stuff. This is kind of getting into even stranger territory than what I talked about before, but a lot of people believe that stones and stuff like that, that the mountains and all the minerals and stuff is the bodies of these giants that had been turned to stone somehow, right? So if that was the case, then everything, every blade of grass we tread upon, every stone we stand upon or build our house upon, every tree we cut down to build a cabin or a home or whatever, we're taking life. Basically, I think that's kind of screwed up, I live in this world and I want to be good and I want to be able to do good, but I don't know what good even is in this place, hardly. On one level or another, it's almost like we exist in a world where it's impossible to be purely good, you know? Because if we were purely good, we'd basically starve to death as a child or something. Never set foot outside of our false environments into nature, knowing that we were stepping on life with each step we take. Yeah. I recognize the unconsciousness within myself as it rises up. I find myself being dragged into unconsciousness over and over because it seems like the whole world imposes this corruption and this unconsciousness on people, on us all. Because as a society, as a species, we exist in this world in a way, living in a way that is so unnatural. Mm. I mean, to even exist in the world the way it is now, being conscious drive you crazy. Being conscious will, yeah, make you freaking nuts because, like, unless you have the ability, you have the financial resources to get away from it all, to get away from the falsehood and the screwed up world, and you know, live in a way where you're not forced to do all this shit that goes against your nature. You know? I mean, if you're not free, or you don't have some space and time to reflect and to commune with nature and God or whatever, you know. I don't know, it's just, well, I mean, like, there's so many ways, it's so obvious, right? Like, I mean, I guess there must be some people that are capable of multitasking and handling this shit, but, like, imagine if you took some, like, Zen monk or something from the old days, right? And put him in a situation, like if you took him out of the monastery, right? And you made him put on a stupid, you know, stupid uniform and go work as a line cook at McDonald's or something, right? And he had to deal with traffic and rude customer, just on and on and on, right? How crazy that would make this guy, like how... I don't know, things are pretty screwed up. I feel like I need to find some greater purpose in life, like this is... It's so hard for me to live like this and I feel like the way things appear to be heading, it's liable to only get more difficult and worse. Like, I don't know how to break free from this situation. I mean, I'll see these people talking about all this positivity and everything. And it just seems... Well, they always seem to, well, you look around them most of the time and they've got, or you look into them and, like, you find out that they've got, they own a house, they've got... I mean, to get into a higher state of consciousness and be all, lovey-dovey, good, right, think happy, happy thoughts forever kind of shit. Like, it's a lot easier, I would imagine, if you own some land and you've got a nice garden and you can, sit out in your freaking Zen garden or whatever and dance around in your freaking garden or whatever and walk inside to comfortable surroundings and so on and so forth and be surrounded by just positive people. And but when that's not an option, you don't have the resources, and you just have all this crazy stuff going on. This dude that goes by Green Wizard or whatever, is that YouTube channel. He talked about some story about how, like, he just felt so much like he had to get out of there, and he just took off with nothing and wandered out into the rain, It's just like, I get it, kind of, like, I remember there was one day this is a couple years ago, around the time my mom died, or in the hospital. I walked around in the rain for probably an hour and a half. It was just pouring down rain. This thick leather jacket that had been raining so long that it soaked right through. The whole leather jacket was like soaking wet. Heavy. And I'm just walking around in the rain. Sometimes when I'm walking out in the woods on the trails and stuff, I have thoughts like, just feels like this world imposes itself on me so much, and there's so much, like, I don't know how to find freedom. I feel like, I don't know if I'd have to, like, just wander off out into the forest by myself and see if I could survive that way. I don't know, man. It's stressful dealing with the job. A lot of things are stressful, you know. Being in poverty is freaking stressful, you know. It just feels like you feel like there's no way out. There's no way to get ahead in this world. What some other people have, the situation that they're in, it seems impossible to achieve. To think that I could ever be in a situation where I own a home, or I have a family, and people around that love me, and or I could ever get away from this fucking darkness that imposes itself on me. I know it'd be very difficult to I don't know, man. I mean, I feel like in this world people sell themselves, and the degree to which they sell themselves into darkness is the degree to which they're rewarded. Those that sell themselves into the darkness, that promote wickedness in this world, grow to be wealthy. Those that don't sell themselves out to darkness, or that only sell themselves on a small scale, are just trapped. You see a guy who gets a job at a grocery store, not contributing to the vast darkness in the world, and he'll never get ahead. 20 years later, he's still working at that grocery store, sweeping out the floors. There's someone on a grander scale that's doing darkness in this world in some way or another, that's promoting, that's assisting in the destruction of our world, greatly rewarded. I see this, and it's sad. Mm. I don't know, man. I mean, I can't pretend to be fully good. But it's like I said, like in this world, things are so screwed up that it's almost like you're forced into darkness. Like we're in a situation where things are so screwed up, where the world is so screwed up that even trying to do good, like the more you try to do good, the more you're screwed over, kind of. I mean, like look at the guys. Well, I mean, if you look at, in large part, I mean, I know this is true, man. Like some of the people out there that are doing the most to try to help the homeless, for instance, are homeless themselves. You know? The problems in this world are so huge. I mean, honestly, it would be difficult the way this world is set up. Even if you were a multi-billionaire, there's only so much you could do. Well, I mean, for instance, right? Like, say you wanted to, let's say you had even $100 billion, right? And you wanted to get a house for everyone, every homeless person in America off the street or something, right? It's possible that you could use up all your resources and not even be able to tackle a problem that big. Because even if you get everyone a place and so on and so forth, there would be additional expenses that would be brought up, taxes and fees and licensing for this, that, and the other thing, and permission that you'd need for this, that, and the other thing. So much red tape, and so many, ways that you're being kind of robbed on the side that it would be difficult to even make any lasting, large, lasting difference. I don't know, the problems here seem so vast and so huge. how has it come to this here, you know? It doesn't make sense that this place could be real. At least not in like a physical sense. Sorry. Because like there's so many things that would be highly improbable, if not impossible, that go on in this world. A lot of, basic practical things that if you really think about them, they just don't add up. Like the scale of mass production of everything doesn't add up, doesn't make sense. And, well, I mean, you take something that, seems relatively simple that we don't even think about, like this smartphone, right? How many of those exist? How many have been produced? If you take a smartphone apart and you look at the circuit board inside, like capacitors, resistors, the circuit boards themselves, all the components that go into making something like that. Never mind the fact that 20, 30 years ago, we didn't have, I used to have a computer that was like a 1.2 gigabyte hard drive, had 28.8 kbps modem, right? Supercomputers back in not that long ago were not as powerful as what we have in our pocket now. That would be impossible for that level of technological advancement to have occurred so quickly. Impossible. It would be like going from the discovery of the wheel or the invention of the wheel to, 20 years later you're, zipping around in flying saucers, flying to the moon or something, It just happened way too fast. It would have to be something, it would have to be something supernatural, something that just doesn't make sense, like trying to explain it away as, it's aliens or God or, this, that, or the other thing. It's magic, whatever, right? It doesn't add up. It doesn't make sense. There's no normal progression of events that would lead to that level of technological advancement in that short of a window of time. And there's other things like, what is it, Matt from Quantum Unconscious calls it stalled century. Like if you look back at a lot of like the things that used to exist in the world, the evidence of things the way things used to be, that it looks like, well, for example, you noticed how it seems like in, say, art forms, for instance, movies, television, paintings, so on and so forth, architecture, etc. So things have been getting worse instead of better, There's advances happening in some areas that are basically impossible to logically explain, and at the same time there's a lot of other areas in which we seem to be going backwards and becoming, much less advanced. Things are getting worse in so many ways, while other things are advancing at rates that would be impossible. That doesn't make sense. It doesn't add up. Alright, then I guess I ranted enough there.